It's America's Test Kitchen, live. Discover the secrets of America's best recipes, testers, and tasters. From public television's favorite cooking team. Your host, Christopher Kimball.
You guys had a lot of coffee here. You're excited. Welcome to America's Test Kitchen Live. We have a live audience today, which means you guys are going to help us with our show. You'll help out with Jack in the tasting lab, Adam in the equipment corner, and Bridget and Julia are going to come in and cook. And you're actually going to be able to taste the food. Usually I just get to taste the food, but you're going to taste the food to see if we did a good job. Now, here at America's Test Kitchen, it's all about why bad things happen to good recipes. So we're going to start with steak au poivre, or pepper steak. We're going to start with that, and we're going to talk a little bit about what cut of meat to use. And here we have, thank you, Rachel, very nicely done. Thank you. We have Cow George. Cow George is gender confused because we could milk Cow George, I guess, but he looks like sort of a boy cow in the front. Anyway, we're going to start with a pepper steak, and we're going to use the tenderloin. This is a muscle that runs along the back. Now, there are two muscles there. One is the shell muscle, that's on top, and it's larger, like a T-bone steak or porterhouse steak. See that large piece of meat? Well, that's the shell, like a shell steak. And underneath that, the smaller piece is the tenderloin. It's very, very tender and doesn't have a lot of flavor, something we're going to have to fix. So we're going to use the tenderloin, and we're also going to start with the world's worst pepper steak and show you what that looks like. And then Julia's going to come in and fix it and show you how to do it the right way. My job at America's Test Kitchen is to do things improperly and show you the bad food. They don't actually let me do the good stuff. So this is a really bad steak au poivre. It's got too many peppers on it. They're searingly hot. And you can also look at this top crust. I mean, that's the crust. Too much pepper, you can't taste the meat. And the filet, which we have here, the tenderloin, obviously doesn't have a lot of flavor. So you just have nothing but mouth-searing heat. So let's bring in Julia Collin, who will actually explain how to do it. Okay, so what are we going to do?
We're going to first crack some peppercorns. Now, peppercorns, black pepper, is kind of an obvious ingredient, but there are a few tricks we learned when making a pepper steak. The first is you don't want to use a pepper mill or anything like that. You want to take whole peppercorns and crack them yourself with the back of a skillet or a heavy pot. Now, it's tempting to just go smash and they go all over. You don't want to do that. You want to be a little more gentle.
That's how I do it.
Yeah, I've noticed. I've seen you do that. So you want to do this to about 5 tablespoons.
So why do you want to crack them? Why don't you just leave them home?
Well, because you want to release all of their flavor. The flavor and the oils are on the inside. So you want to release all that. And then while I finish that, you can heat up, this is 5 tablespoons of olive oil.
Is this my whole job
Yeah,
here?
I'm going to pass you things.
I'm putting the oil in the pan.
This will be a total of 5 tablespoons of cracked black pepper. And we're going to heat the oil and the pepper together. And it only takes about 7 to 10 minutes. You want to do it about over medium heat. Thank you. And you don't want to blast it, you don't want it boiling, you just want it to bare simmer until you really start to smell things. And it won't just smell like pepper, you'll start to smell some floral notes, maybe some coffee, maybe some chocolate. So now we're going to make a pan sauce. Now this is a different kind of pan sauce than we usually make because we're going to make a reduction. So it's all on its own. For example, if you're having someone over for dinner, you could do this ahead of time and then just whisk in the butter to serve. So this is a good generic technique to know. And we're going to start with port, which is a little sweet and thick, which will go great with the peppercorns on the steak, but it also reduces down to a nice syrup that has a good body. This is half a cup of balsamic vinegar, a minced shallot, and a little thyme, and cherries, of course. You can put any kind of dried fruit in here, but with the port and the little bit of balsamic, the cherries and the pepper, it's a great combination. So these are tart cherries, about a cup of them.
And we should say something about the balsamic, which is, you can buy $200 bottles. That's if you have a trust fund.
Yeah, seriously.
It's called trust fund balsamic.
Those are good, though.
We found that a supermarket bottle for $3 or $4. If you cook it down a little, it's almost as good as the really expensive stuff.
So this is going to go for about 30 minutes. That's going to go for about 10. Of course, I have some already done. This is what it looks like after it's simmered, but it smells totally different. But I'm going to add some table salt to this pepper mixture. And one thing we found with beef, and this is pretty universal, before you cook beef, you want to let it sit on the counter for a little bit, and you want to put the salt on it for about an hour. And it'll bring all the beef flavors out, and any seasoning on the surface of the meat will be drawn in. So leaving your meat on the counter for about an hour with the salt on is just a good generic technique. So now we're just going to take the steaks, and this gets a little messy, but that's kind of the fun, and you coat them with this peppery oil. And you want to really coat both the sides and get a good amount on the top because that's the searing part.
So while you're doing that, let's talk about the cuts of meat that we tested. This is a whole tenderloin.
That looks pretty.
And the question is, what should you buy? Well, if you just go to the store and say, let's get filet mignon, what you can find sometimes is you get uneven cuts. If you're paying 25 bucks a pound, you come home with something like this part will overcook before this side is done. That's no good. So we say, go out and buy the Chateaubriand, which is the center cut of the tenderloin, okay? And you're gonna cut it into 4 2-inch thick slices.
So now we're going to sear these guys off, and these have been sitting out for an hour so that they're nice and flavorful. I'm going to let you unwrap this.
Oh, great.
I'll give you the good jobs. But while you do that, I'm going to put a sheet pan in the oven. Now the cooking of this tenderloin is twofold. We're going to sear it on the stove and then let it finish in the oven.
Is that a good job?
Nice work. Okay. Nice work. So that way you can get a good sear on either side, and then you can cook it to the right doneness in the oven without having to worry about the pan burning or the crust burning. So the oven's at 450 degrees. I'm just going to put the pan in to preheat. And now we're going to sear the steaks. And we're not going to use too much oil, just 2 teaspoons is plenty. If you use more, really the steaks just get a little oily. And over medium-high heat, or I'm going to crank it now to start to get it hot, but then I'm going to turn it down to medium-high heat for the actual cooking. Now, knowing when your pan is hot is crucial here. The better indicator rather than time is to see what the oil's doing. So we put the oil in the cold pan, heat it up, and you can see it starting to smoke, just wisps of smoke. It's exactly what we're looking for. So this again over medium-high heat. I'm going to arrange the steaks in the skillet, giving a lot of room around each steak. Again, if you put something cold in a pan, the temperature of the pan goes down. And so you put all this cold meat in and you want to bring the temperature of the pan back up. And by giving it a lot of space, you're enabling that to happen.
Okay, while you're cooking the steaks, I'm gonna go through some of my favorite kitchen gadgets. This is the most useful thing we've ever found in the test kitchen, and also the most expensive. It's called a thermopen. It's about 85 bucks. You can get it online almost everywhere. It's a digital read thermometer. The thing we really like about this is the very tip is where it registers the temperature.
And it's super fast. It gets there in an instant.
And some of the other ones actually measure up in here, which isn't very good if you're going into a thick roast. So thermopen, 85 bucks.
And they're cool colors, which goes a long way in my book.
There's a big age difference here. Yeah, cool colors. This is a Messermeister serrated peeler. OXO also makes one. It's about 6 bucks. You can actually peel a fresh tomato or a peach.
Or a peach.
Instead of dipping in boiling water, then in cold water. This actually works great. It does actually work. This is an AccuSharp, and this AccuSharp is only about 10 bucks.
And it looks like nothing. It looks like it wouldn't work, but it works great.
And it actually works quite well.
And it's easy to use.
This is a Polder. It's about $19, a little timer. You can wear it around your neck.
Yeah.
And
in the test kitchen, all the test cooks have 2 or 3 of these around their neck at a time because you're timing different things. They count up and down. And also, the parking lot next to the test kitchen where we all park, the meter maids are on the money. And 1 minute over. So you always have one for your meter and you have one for the cooking.
Except for those of us with executive parking.
Yeah, I know. Fancy pants.
OXO makes a great, and we use these tongs all the time. They lock, unlock. And if you watch us in the test kitchen cooking, you'll notice on the show all the time, it's almost exclusively tongs. Yeah. You can move food around.
And these are great because they're non-stick, so you don't have to worry about your non-stick pans.
The garlic press. Jacques Pepin, all the chefs in New York would yell at me for saying it's a garlic press.
They hate these things.
They're just wrong.
I love it.
A few years ago, Xylus made a garlic press. This is the jumbo model. You can do 3 or 4 cloves at a time. You don't have to take the paper off the cloves, and they'll actually filter that out. And it works great. The other thing most people don't know is if you press garlic, you get more flavor, right?
It releases more oils because you're breaking down the
cell membranes.
Structure.
So forget what the experts say.
Awesome.
Use them.
I slice off the root end and I put it cut side down in there so the paper pushes all the garlic through.
And the last thing, of course, is a microplane zester. We started buying these about 5 or 6 years ago.
It's a woodworking tool, actually.
It was. It has a handle. Some of them have handles. You want the handle. Great for ginger, garlic, other things. Works great.
You know what my favorite tool in the kitchen is?
Me.
So you can see the crust is gorgeous. It's not burned, and that's because we use medium-high heat and a good amount of oil, 2 teaspoons, so that the peppercorns are not burned, and then the crust underneath, the meat, actually has a sear on it. All right, so these are about done. They've been searing, again, about 3 to 4 minutes on each side. Now I'm going to take the whole skillet over to the oven and put them on that hot sheet pan, and they're going to finish cooking in the oven. About 5 to 7 minutes, or really to your desired doneness, which you keep tempting us to see rare, medium rare, and so on.
That's just enough time for us to go into the equipment corner, one of my favorite parts of the show. Now, how many of you love wine? Yeah. All right. So I didn't ask you.
2 hands.
Well, it's really important to get into the bottle as quickly as possible, especially after a hard day at America's Test Kitchen. So we're going to have Adam show us a little bit about wine opening. All right, I'm here with Adam in the equipment corner, and I got a major bone to pick with you about this. All we're talking about is taking this little thing, stay with me here, this little thing out of the bottle. That's it. That's all. This is not whipping egg whites. This is not an expensive knife. And this I'm not letting you say a word. This waiter's corkscrew for $3 gets the cork out. So what's the no?
What is more important than doing quickly and easily, Chris? That works,
cheaply,
but it takes a lot of practice.
Okay.
All right, we tested 13 different corkscrews in the equipment corner, and there are a lot of different types. This is called an asso, and it's got 2 different prongs of different lengths. And we actually went and found an audience volunteer who I'm going to have come up right now to try this thing out. Come on up. Come on over to this side. What's your name?
Mary Ellen Powers.
Mary Ellen, nice to see you.
Pleasure to see
Thank
you.
you for coming.
You're welcome.
So the way this works is that you have these 2 prongs and you want to wedge them between the cork and the neck of the bottle,
Okay.
and then pull gently to get the cork out.
Okay.
Why don't you give that a try?
I tried this. I never could make it work.
I managed to push a bunch of corks into the bottle with this thing. While Mary Ellen's working on that, we'll go through a couple of the other types. This is actually a pump. You put this needle through the cork and pump it to get air into the bottle, and it pushes the cork up. Doesn't work all that well.
Doesn't this come with a warning about exploding bottles?
Well, it does. In
Yeah.
fact, the directions are very specific. The bottle can't have cracks or chips. You need to be really, really careful.
That's gone.
Another type is this. This is actually called continuous turning or torque action. It's got a very long worm. You put it over the top of the bottle and just keep turning, and the cork actually rides up the worm, so you can get rid of the cork that way.
That works okay, right?
That works pretty well. We like those. How's it going, Mary Ellen? You don't have to stick with this. Don't worry about it.
No, she's making it work.
Oh,
Look at
you
this.
are.
She's,
You're making it work. You're going to show me up. You're doing better than I did.
She's the
with
VP
that.
of sales from the ASO company.
Here it comes.
Will be now.
Slowly but
You will
surely.
be
What were we
now.
talking about? Getting the cork out of the bottle fast? All right. A round of applause. You did way better than I did. Thank you very much.
You're
And you
welcome.
can take the bottle as your
Oh, I
prize.
will. Thank you.
Excellent.
You notice she left this here with us.
We still have it. We also have the wing type of corkscrew where you screw in the worm and the wings go up and you just press down. And then we have all of these, which are lever type corkscrews, where you clamp the handles around the neck of the bottle, put the lever down and pull it back up. This is the class that we like best. This testing was actually an update of one that I did 10 years ago. And in fact, back then, we chose the ultimate corkscrew as one of these lever models.
Can I
but
try
they
this?
were expensive then. Yeah, absolutely. Here's a bottle of wine.
Just telling me this works, but I don't know.
They were like $125 then. There's good news. They've come down in price. You can still spend $125, but it was value that actually put our winner into
Do I get
place.
some applause or what?
Only if you guys get glasses of wine, right?
I could have done 20 bottles by the time the ASO was finished. Okay.
This one was the winner. This is the Wine Enthusiast Zoom. Guess how much it was?
Well, these used to be over $100,
Yeah,
right?
they were like $125.
$50.
$12.95.
Really?
Yeah, it works really well. It's plastic. It may not last until the next millennium or anything. You might have to replace it, but at $13, you can definitely afford to do that. So this was the winning, by virtue of value and operation, the Wine Enthusiast Zoom corkscrew. The ultimate corkscrew, the one that we like the best, is the screw pull trigger. And we like that just because it's a really easy way of securing the opener right on the neck. You just squeeze this trigger, there goes the lever, and
How
there
much
goes
is
the
that?
cork. This one's about $100, so this is if you want to spend a little more.
So for $85, you get the trigger?
For $85, you get the trigger, but that's the
I'm
winner.
a Vermonter. We're going with a $12.99. This is actually good. This is $3, the waiter's corkscrew, and this is like $13.
Have I convinced you? You're going to upgrade, aren't
Yeah, okay. So,
And what's
so
the
we here for this? Let's go back with Julie and finish up those pepper steaks that I'm going to take. $2.
So the steaks are out of the oven, and then we're in the oven for about 5 to 7 minutes. Now the key to knowing if you have rare or medium rare is to use, as we said, this thermopen. And I want to know if these steaks are resting. Another really good universal cooking point, when you cook meat, let it rest 5 to 10 minutes before you try to slice into it. So we cooked this until it registered 115 to 120, and for a nice, perfect medium rare, we're going to want it to read right between 125 and 130, and that's a perfect medium rare.
Now, in Vermont, it has to be between 170 and 180.
That's for squirrel, right?
No one eats it if it's got any pink color.
And notice I'm letting it rest on a rack over a baking sheet because we have the crust on 2 sides, and if you let it sit on the crust gets kind of soggy. And this is, again, that sauce with the port and the balsamic and the cherries that reduced for about half an hour. And we're going to finish it with just a modest tablespoon of butter. You can whisk that in.
Oh.
I'll let you do that.
I can deal with a hot pan.
Yeah. So while you do that, I'm going to slice into this and check it out. Yeah, that'll look good. See, that's a perfect medium rare. It's pink just in the center, seared on both sides. And again, if you cut into it right out of the oven, it wouldn't look that perfect. It's the resting that really helps it look that good. Put a little bit of this on top. Oh, the beef and the cherries, yeah, and the port with the peppercorns.
And now I get to eat it. You get to watch me eat it.
I feel kind of guilty eating this in front of you guys. It's really good. I know you'll have tastings coming.
Actually, the good news is you guys are going to get some of this.
You will.
Yeah. Take a pause or what? So to sum up how we did this great steak au poivre, the first secret was to take the peppercorns and cook them a little bit in oil, and that tames their heat, cool it off.
Yep.
Then we added a tablespoon of salt, and then we covered the steaks in the salt and let it sit for an hour, and that salt helped bring out the beefiness. And then we used a typical restaurant concept, which is top of the stove for sautéing, and then into an oven to finish, and that gives you nice, even cooking. So there you have it, a fabulous steak au poivre, which you're about to eat as well, and you can see if you like it.
Yeah.
And by the way, coming in the second half is the best recipe. I say it's absolutely true. The best recipe we've ever done in America's Test Kitchen over 7 years. So you'll actually get to taste that too. So don't go away. And we'd like you actually to stay with us just a minute because we care so much about public television. Public television gave me my start. Where else could this show be with a guy with a bow tie be? Public television. It's a show about content. We're so thankful we can be on public television. We'd like you to stay tuned and see if you could help out and support this public television station. Thanks. You probably know if you watch America's Test Kitchen, I'm sure you all do, is that we always put a little butter in our food occasionally. We actually like fat. People often say, why don't you have nutritional requirements in light food? And I say, well, when you want good food, sometimes it needs fat, sometimes it doesn't. Have an apple for dessert if you want a low-calorie dessert. But when you want chocolate cake, you got to put some fat in it to get the flavor. And this is about an old-fashioned style of cake. It's got a nice, thick, fluffy frosting, so the texture has to hold up that frosting. It can't be like a box cake mix. And we also don't want a real ganache, which we'll see in a minute, which is really heavy and fudgy. So we wanted something you probably have not tasted in a long, long time, if ever. And we're going to make a great chocolate cake. And then you guys are actually going to get to taste it and see if you agree with us. So let's go into the kitchen now. Yeah, I'll say I like that. All right. Let me just start with what a lot of you consider sort of the gourmet chocolate cake, which is a ganache, which is very heavy and fudgy. And I love chocolate, but if you eat a decent slice of this, you can only get about halfway through. So we're not looking for this. We want something that has a lighter texture, but does have that rich chocolate flavor. So let's bring in Bridget, who's going to tell us how to get it. Did you bring your whole extended family or what?
I did. You guys are all home. Thank you very much. All right, time for chocolate cake. Best part of the show, I think. And we're going to start off with the secret. I'm going to give the secret away at the very beginning. This is 4 ounces of unsweetened chocolate, 1/4 cup of Dutch processed cocoa. I mixed it with a little bit of hot water, about 1/2 cup. Mixed it until it's kind of this fudgy consistency here. I am going to add 1/2 cup of sugar in there. And you're going to see this dissolve into the mixture and get really thick and glossy. Now what I'm doing, and this is over a pot of barely simmering water. If you could turn that up for me just a little bit. The sugar's going to dissolve. It's going to become really thick and glossy. And this is what's called a pudding.
We found, again, a little bit of science here is when we added the sugar, that allowed the cocoa solids and the cocoa powder to bond with the fat and the chocolate.
That's right.
And that mixture actually bloomed the flavor and made it much better. Otherwise, the chocolate solids might actually bond with the water.
That's right.
So that sugar was really the key.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's really thick and glossy. Doesn't that look beautiful? You just want to dip your whole hand in there and kind of eat it. So we're going to set this to the side and get started with the rest of our recipe. We're actually going to start with the eggs, and this is 4 large eggs plus 2 egg yolks, right into the mixer, and blend it on low speed just until they're slightly blended, coming together. This is 1 1/4 cup of sugar that's going to go in right here at the beginning. We're going to turn this up to high. We're going to beat it until the eggs are really voluminous and light and frothy and fluffy. That's going to take about 2 minutes. Crank that all the way up. And you're going to see this really get thick and like a lemon yellow color. And what we found was that this ribboning, what it did was created volume from the eggs so that we could have a sturdy but moist cake. So let's take a look at this. And I'm going to hold this up so everybody can see how beautiful and creamy. Hopefully you can see that. So now I'm going to get rid of my whisk attachment because we've really gotten all the air we want to into this cake, and I'm going to switch over to the paddle because we're going to start incorporating ingredients. So I'm going to grab this cooled chocolate mixture. I'm going to add this in. Now it's just cooled, not to room temperature, but you
Can I
just
see?
don't want it, yes.
It's cool.
You just
way
don't,
cool.
You don't want it to be so hot that it's now going to scramble these eggs that we work so hard to get really good and fluffy. So in this goes, and this is kind of the money shot here. And I'm not going to give you the spatula yet, so just stop looking wistfully.
You know, a lot of people who write us get really upset if we taste the food before it's cooked. Anybody here like that? Too bad. We taste it anyway. We know you do it at home too, so
That's our job.
that's our job.
So I'm just going to incorporate this for about 30 seconds until the chocolate is mixed in.
Now, usually a genoise, the French sponge cake, is very temperamental, and I've made a lot of them, and
Yes.
some worked and some didn't. So this isn't going to have that temperamental problem.
No, we really only use the egg process of whipping them at the beginning. We're not going to be sifting ingredients in here or anything like that. All right, that looks good. Now, another key step here. I've got 12 tablespoons of unsalted butter. And I'm just going to add these one at a time for about 10 to 15 seconds in between each addition. Now what this is going to do is really disperse the butter through the batter and make it rich and glossy, but not greasy.
So while Bridget's doing that, it's time for Chris Kimball's and America's Test Kitchen favorite baking gadgets. All right, there you go. All right. There we go. I'm getting used to this applause thing, you know.
This is your tool time.
This is my tool time. This is a tapered rolling pin, of course, instead of the American style. We like these. I actually use one that's even thinner than this. It's good if you're using dough, you're doing a circle.
Yep.
It's very good. And you also get a better feel for the dough underneath. A typical handle rolling bearing style American pin's a little heavy.
Yeah,
You can't
I like
really
those a
feel
lot
it.
better.
So these work great. This is a cup for pushing up and measuring ingredients. This is called Adjust a Cup. It has lots of different kinds of measurements here, like 1/3 of a cup, 1/2 a cup. It has different sizes, like ounces. So that works great. This is not really a gadget, but it's a $15 Chicago metallic cake pan. It's dark, which gives nice browning, and it does have that 2-inch.
Yeah, the ones you get at the grocery store are often too shallow, 1.5 inches. That's
So,
great.
you said I was too shallow?
Yeah.
This is a Cool Tech glove for handling things like the grill or the oven.
Asbestos.
The problem is these are $22 each. This is $44 worth of gloves, but they give you lots of. I'll just try one on.
Yeah, so you actually only need to buy one. Then it's only 22. And you just keep the other arm behind your back.
When we have fights, you keep one arm behind your back. Okay. This is probably the most useful, other than that thermopen we talked about earlier. Ovens are boxes that get hot. They are not necessarily always accurate. In fact, we did tests a few years ago where we measured with very expensive thermometers all the test cooks' ovens at home.
In fact, they're almost never accurate.
Yes, and they were off by up to 100 degrees, one from the other. Taylor, blue alcohol, $13 or $14, $15, very inexpensive. This is fairly accurate.
Yeah. And it's actually even a good idea to buy two. One
In
for
case
the
it's
front
not
of your
so
oven,
accurate.
one for the back, and they can kind of keep the accuracy of each other.
And finally, we have an OXO pastry brush, which is relatively inexpensive.
These are great.
They clean up nicely. Some of the old-fashioned French
Yeah.
ones I have
they
attain an
get-
odor after a while.
Yeah, they get a little
grotty.
greasy.
These work great, and,
And it's silicone, isn't it?
yeah,
Yeah. Isn't that fun?
feels good. Yeah. You need a little touch up here. Okay,
Thanks.
there we are. Those are our
Gonna take more than that
favorite
brush.
baking tools.
All right, so you can see this batter is really good. At this point, it's nice and thick and creamy. So now I'm going to start adding the dry ingredients. Now in this bowl, I've whisked together 1 3/4 cup of all-purpose flour, a teaspoon of salt, which may sound like a lot, but it's actually that salt that's going to bring out the best of the chocolate flavor, and 1 1/2 teaspoons of soda. So I'm going to add about 1/3 of this, and when you want to add it in stages, you don't want to add it all at once. You'll get those big clumps, and then I'll end up with flour pockets at the very end. So I'm just going to start beating this in very slowly. It takes about 15 seconds in between each addition. So when it starts to look like it's just incorporating, I'm going to add my wet mixture, which is a cup of buttermilk and 2 teaspoons of vanilla. We're just going to react with that baking soda and help to lift the cake again. And I'm going to add half of this. Again, beating for about 15 seconds in between each addition. And the rest of the buttermilk mixture. And I always like to turn off the machine when I'm adding the flour. I've learned too many times. I can barely get it in the bowl with it off. The rest of the flour mixture. In it goes. Just want to beat this until the flour is just incorporated, but you still want to see a few little nuggets of flour in there, because what I'm going to do is take it, doesn't that look good?
Is that for me? Fat chance.
There you go.
Yeah, give it to the camera guy. Don't give it to me.
Just going to take it off of the machine and really finish it by hand. Is that good, Chris?
So good I can't talk.
It wouldn't be an old-fashioned chocolate
You know,
cake if you
people are
didn't
going to
get
start moving towards the counter, Bridget. we never could finish the cake as the batter got stolen.
Now, see, it's always a good idea to finish the batter by hand, too, because you don't want this machine really, really beating the flour in this batter, because the flour contains gluten, which is a protein, and that's what causes the batter to become too stiff.
I was listening. Really, believe me, I was listening.
Yeah.
Okay.
What did I just say?
I don't know.
All right, so this comes, the easy part. I've got 2 floured and greased pans here, the 9-inch cake pans. A little division is necessary here, just an eyeball here, an eyeball there. You can also use a scale if you like. It's
But
old-fashioned.
that's a little fussy.
Yeah, I don't think Granny
So you can
probably used that.
weigh each cake pan to make sure they weigh the same.
Sure can.
Right.
Scrape every last bit of batter in there. Maybe there's a little bit.
You know, you are a generous soul. Look at that. That was nice of you. I don't even leave this much for my kids.
I was leaving that for me.
Yeah, your kids are young. All right.
Just want to smooth this to the sides. So fluffy. My mouth is watering. There you
Now
go.
that's
That's
that's-
love. That's what that is.
yeah. This is why I come to work, Bridget.
I was just going to ask you to hold that for me.
Oh, here, you want some?
I'm going to put these in a 350-degree oven, and we want to bake them until a toothpick inserted into the center comes out with just a few crumbs attached. You don't want it to come out completely dry, because remember, we're looking for a really good moist cake. So in it goes. It's about 25 to 30 minutes. I'm going to check it at like 22, because again, you never know with your ovens. Always want to check it sooner rather than later.
There's plenty of time for me to go to the tasting lab with Jack, and we're going to taste dark chocolates.
Yum.
But a little bit of twist this time. I always do a blind tasting. I don't know which is which, which I'm going
right.
to do again here. Jack's going to try to fool me. Jack
good at
lives for this, by the way. And we have a little twist. You guys also are going to taste it and give us your votes.
Perfect.
So we'll see if you agree with me or vice versa. Let's go to the tasting lab. Now, I'm here in the tasting lab with Jack, but I need to tell you a little story about Jack to explain why he loves this. At the end of last season, we did a butter tasting, and it was spread thickly, I might add, on slices of baguette. So I went to taste the first one. This is 8:30 in the morning, and there was a thick layer of chili paste hidden under the butter. But that wasn't the funny part. The funny part was I had a big glass of water, and of course, you know, it was very hot, so I drank about 1/3 of the glass, and my brain went, this isn't water. This is vodka. And that was Jack's best day in the office in the last 20 years. So now you know something about Jack. But at least with chocolate, I'm kind of safe.
You think you're safe, Chris? I mean, you know, at any moment. This is the part where you actually have to work. So
Okay.
I'm going to let you start tasting. We had a tasting panel back at America's Test Kitchen, sample 9 brands of dark chocolate. I brought 3 of them here today, and the studio audience has also tasted the same 3 samples that you are now tasting. The studio audience, to put a little pressure on
Who are you going to believe?
the studio
Me?
audience and the tasting panel, complete agreement. So Chris, if you miss it this time, you're missing it not only with studio audience, but with this tasting
I
panel.
always choose the most expensive brands, which is different.
Do you have any opinions, Chris?
Do I have any opinions?
Why don't we start by telling me what you think about sample number A?
I bet it's Ghirardelli. The reason I know, because we use Ghirardelli in the test kitchen all the time, it has the most amount of sugar, at least it tastes that way to me. It's smoother, it's very good, but I don't think it has a tremendous amount of character. And this is all about character, right? Isn't cooking all about character?
It is now. So tell me what you think about B. What did B taste like to you?
I thought B was maybe a little less sweet. I don't think it has a lot of character either. It's okay.
Chocolate that doesn't have character, Chris?
Well, it didn't
come
have the one I really like, which seems to be to have the least amount of sugar at all, is this one.
Okay.
And I don't care what anybody else says. I got to cover myself just in case. This tastes to me like a really smoky, serious baking chocolate that doesn't necessarily have as much sugar, but it's got that smoky, sophisticated taste.
Oh God! All right, I knew where this was going.
So I bet everyone's going to pick this one, but I like this one.
So all right, so C is your favorite. Now let's start with your least favorite.
I say B is my least favorite.
All right, those of you who liked B, that filled out B as your favorite, will you raise your hands?
You got one 8-year-old, Jack.
Well, that's actually a very expensive, low-sugar chocolate that the pastry chefs in the kitchen liked. The rest of the staff
a future pastry chef.
did not like it. It was too sophisticated.
Let's say for her. See, what a palate. Good job.
And let me reveal, that is an American brand. It's Scharfenberger. It's the one here in the blue. It's very low sugar and very expensive, and was least favorite of our tasting panel and also least favorite of the total studio audience. Let's go to A, which was your sort of runner.
Everyone's going to love it.
Your runner-up. Those of you in the studio audience that liked A, raise your hands, and there were a lot of you. There were a total of 28. This was the top choice of the studio audience and the top choice of the tasting panel, Chris.
It just shows that everybody can be wrong, except me.
Except for you, because you're
That's
never
my
wrong.
my basic premise.
This is another American brand, Ghirardelli from California. It is got a higher sugar content, which you did pick out. Your palate is working, Chris.
That's good.
Your wallet's going to be empty fairly soon, but your palate was working.
Now we got rid of the bad brands. Let's get to the really good one.
All right. So
what was this?
This is Callebaut, it's a Belgian brand.
Callebaut.
Of course, Chris picked something European.
Look at this Callebaut.
Now, those of you out in the studio audience, raise your hands, because there were a fair number of you.
You guys are great.
This was the
You
runner.
wanted to come and be interns?
This was the runner-up. It was a close second place.
Good. It's a good tasting.
With the audience. Again, it's got a fair amount of sugar. It is pretty expensive. This is how it's sold. Most gourmet stores will break this up into small 1-pound chunks. This costs $60, which I know, Chris.
Well, it lasts more than a week. This may be a lifetime supply for some people. So Jack has had a very good day because everyone liked Ghirardelli except me, and I love the Callebaut. Although professional bakers like it too, you have to admit that. So there we go. We know which chocolate we like. Let's go back and get those cakes out of the oven and finish making that old-fashioned chocolate layer cake. Better applause.
There we go. Seriously, welcome back.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is like a welcome back. I've been busy working. You were out having fun.
Yeah, pretty much. Just like every day.
Just like every day. Okay. So these are out of the oven and cool.
That's right. These are our cooled chocolate cakes. Don't they look beautiful?
Yeah, how long do you have to cool them?
Well,
No, let's hear that ooh again.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, now you can go.
Well, you want to cool them in the pan for about 15 minutes and then turn them out on the rack and cool completely. You don't want to try to frost a warm cake. So I've started here with the chocolate. Now this is a full pound of semi-sweet chocolate. So you know it's going to be good. And that semi-sweet is just the right flavor for our cakes. Not too decadent, not too rich. All right, so I'm going to put this into my mixing bowl. Scrape every last bit. Unlike the cake batter, I'm going to get every last bit out here. There we go.
Well, you were so generous with the batter, and now you're going to be stingy with the frosting.
Frosting's all for
Everything
me.
evens out in life, right? Okay.
So this is a mixture here. It's 8 tablespoons of butter, which I've melted, unsalted butter. We always use
I
that
did
in the test
mention this
kitchen.
was not a light chocolate cake.
No light chocolate cake. It's a 1/3 cup of sugar. It's 2 tablespoons of corn syrup, again, to keep the frosting from becoming too hard. It's a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Again, salt brings out the chocolate flavor, and 2 teaspoons of vanilla. So I'm going to pour that right in with the chocolate.
By the way, we use salt a lot in our desserts, which a lot of people don't, especially with chocolate. It actually brings out the flavor.
You know, you need salt.
It's a small thing, but it's important.
Well, to me, you need salt to appreciate the sweetness, just like in life. If you could put that right back
I'll
over
provide
there.
the bitterness, you can provide the sweetness.
And this is 1 1/4 cup of cold heavy cream. It's the cold part that's really important here. Cold heavy cream keeps this in a state of emulsion, which we like, nice and thick and creamy, but it also will help it to cool down faster. And see, it looks like that at first. When you start mixing it together, it's going to get really good.
So this doesn't take that much time
Sure
between now
doesn't.
and the time you can whip it up.
Sure doesn't. Now that chocolate was still warm, as was that butter mixture. You really don't need to let it cool down to room temperature. That's what the cold heavy cream is going to help to do. So you can see how good this is
That's
looking.
one of your better baking moments, I have to say.
Already. All right. And now we can just exit. We don't need to actually make the frosting. All right, so now, to cool it down even faster, I'm going to put this in an ice water bath. And I just want to stir it over the ice water, really scraping the sides as it kind of starts to harden. And we want to look for a temperature that's about 70 degrees. We don't want it to be too much warmer when we go to whip it. 75 degrees, it won't really whip. And 65 degrees, it'll be too hard and it'll get kind of gritty. Again, we want to avoid that. So, get rid of that for me. Onto my mixer. And again, I'm going to use the paddle this time because we want to incorporate a little bit of air, but not too much. We don't want this frosting to be so aerated that it has tons of air pockets in it. Just going to beat this on high until it's good and creamy. And see, it looks like that at first. When you start mixing it together, it's going to get really good. All right, so that is about it. I'm going to give this a final stir. You can see how creamy that is. Let me give it a final stir, and then I'm going to show the audience. Here you go.
I'm holding it. I'm just holding it for you, right?
Yeah, right. All right, now, who wouldn't eat that frosting?
Does that look great or what?
So I like to put the cake, there's always a little bit of a dome on one side. I like to start with the flat side down because what's going to happen is I'm going to turn the other one flat side up. So it's going to
So you don't have to worry about cutting the dome off to make a flat top?
No, you sure don't. Especially with an old-fashioned chocolate cake, you shouldn't have to do any of that. Start with 1½ cups of frosting and just take it out to the sides.
You know, I've never noticed such intense concentration from an audience before. It's like,
So next,
I like that. That's a good trick. I like
flat
that.
side up.
Very good. I like that.
And start icing it. All right. A big blob on top. And I like to start frosting from the top and work it to the sides. I'll go over this a couple of times just to make sure that it's well covered all over. Now let's spackle the sides here. Here, why don't you hold that?
Oh, you want me to do something? Be useful.
There you go. Just want to turn this. It's always good to have a really tall kitchen assistant.
Well, I've gone from tool to assistant, so things must be improving around here.
How's that looking, folks?
I said this is the best recipe we've ever done, and I don't take that back.
And I just want to kind of smooth out the top a little bit, work my spatula back and forth, and then make some swirls. And that is
You're done.
old-fashioned
She's
chocolate.
officially done. Now, I think this has been a great audience today, and so we're actually going to feed them some of this cake.
Who wants cake? Anybody?
Anybody want cake?
No. 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 8, 9. All right, I'm going to cut up the rest for the crew here, but enjoy the cake out there. All right, proof's in the pudding.
This is like-
Let's check it out.
This is our all-time best recipe. And the reason it's our all-time best recipe is because Bridget made it, but because we started with an old-fashioned concept back in the early 19th century of a pudding mix, which is chocolate, cocoa powder, water, and sugar, and that was really the basis of the cake.
Yep.
And the frosting used cold cream instead of warm cream in the ganache,
That's
which
right.
meant you could whip it up after a couple minutes, which is easy. So that's it for America's Test Kitchen Live. We'd love to thank the audience. You guys were terrific.
Thank you.
Enjoy your cake. Great job. Thanks. Let's bring out the cast as well, everybody. Jack and Adam, Julia. Let's bring out the kitchen staff, everybody. Come on, guys. Come on. That's it, a live version of America's Test Kitchen. We hope you enjoyed the food, the cooking, and the fun we all have in the kitchen together. This is actually not work for us, right? No. Here you go. She said it with a straight face. Goodbye. We had a great time. Thanks for coming.